So in section 4.5, we're going to look at what led to the American Revolution. It very much begins with this kind of fight for supremacy over that of the colonies themselves. Spain, France, England, and the Dutch all are involved in fighting with each other and really trying to figure out who is going to control the North American continent. You have the Anglo-Dutch Wars. There were 4 of them, 1652 to 1654, 65 to 67, 72 to 74, and then in the 1700s, 80 to 84 as part of the American Revolution. So in all of these, they're really going to work to push the Dutch out and to completely control all of the area. Obviously, England is the clear winner and gains all the lands that previously belonged to the Dutch. Spain tries to stay out of North America except for down at the bottom in Florida, as you can see down here. The French are going to stick to their Catholic settlements along the St. Lawrence River. Montreal, Quebec are going to be important to them. They have a very small population, only about 5% of the British population at that time. The British colonial system, the colonies have more freedom than the British do at home. And so they're going to use this to establish their own local officials and colonial assemblies. Not necessarily approved by that of the King of England, but they are going to do it. They establish that property holders can vote. More property owners in the colonies equal more representation. And remember, through the headright system, they were they were told at that time that they would get representation eventually. It still has not happened. The assemblies are going to control the colonies, not the royal governor, and self-government becomes a cherished right. It gets to the point where almost all the colonies by the 1700s have been switched to royal charters. And in doing so, the king has chosen governors to be in charge of each colony. But the colonies aren't going to listen to those governors. They're going to basically do whatever they want. Really become self-sufficient in the things that they do. And mercantilism is really going to help cement the economy that the colonies have. Because if they have a strong economy, they don't have to rely on England so much. The government tries to control all economic activities. Well, they really tried, but they fail. Industry is regulated, taxed, and subsidized. Any skilled tradesman, it gets to the point where they're telling skilled tradesmen, no, you can't go to the colonies. They get to the colonies anyway. The ideology really was produce gold and silver as well as other raw materials. Create a captive market. The colony forced to buy only British goods, so put rules into place that they can only buy British goods. They're going to send the poor, unemployed, and imprisoned to the colonies. Really try to get them out of England due to overpopulation that is there. And they figure James Oglethorpe is not taking anybody to Georgia like he said he would. But in other colonies, if they can get these individuals, these debtors, people in prison, clear those prisons out by just sending them to the New World, it would help. The colonies are not allowed to produce their own goods. There are specific things that they're only allowed to get from England. Glass, certain finished goods. They have the opportunity to do so on their own, and they do in secret. But there are certain goods that England itself is going to tell them, no, you can only create those in England and then import them in. So how are they going to regulate all of this through the mercantile system? And that's where the Navigation Acts come from. The Navigation Acts are going to restrict shipping between England and the other colonies. There are 3 separate acts. The first one says English goods must be transported only on English ships. The Dutch are going to encourage them to smuggle as much as they can, to really try to do, undermine that of England. not doing so well in the Anglo-Dutch War, so they're going to encourage the colonies to go out there and smuggle goods in. Now, the problem with this is it gets to a point where a ship only has a couple Englishmen on it and the rest are Dutch. And so when they're raided and they're like, you're supposed to only be transporting on English ships, they're like, well, we have 2 English guys over there. And so they're going to change the rules to that you have to have 75% of the crew is English for it to count as an English ship. In 1660, they're going to state only certain products can only be sent to England. Tobacco, furs, those kind of things. Things where they can make a profit, only England was allowed to get. You were not allowed to send those to the French or the Spanish, or even to the Caribbean. Those had to go to England itself. And so people are obviously going to ignore both of those rules, both rules so far. So in 1663, they're going to put out what is known as the Staples Act, which is another part of the Navigation Acts. It says all goods for other countries must go through Great Britain and pay a tax first. So if you were sending something from, say, Virginia to the Caribbean, to a French island in the Caribbean, you would have to sail it all the way to England, pay a tax, and then it could go to the Caribbean. That's going to cause problems as well. So New England is going to be the most affected by all of these rules. They're paying heavily on a lot of things. And New England wants their autonomy back. They want that ability to do what they want on their own. So Britain is really pushing back on this. New England is affected the most. 1678, Massachusetts legislature declares that the Navigation Acts are illegal because without representation, and they didn't get a say in what they were doing, they didn't think it was fair. 1684, England is going to revoke the Royal Charter of Massachusetts, saying you either play by our rules or you'll be punished. By 1700, the English have surpassed the Dutch in the colonies, primarily because the first 3 Dutch wars over, and so the Dutch have really been squeezed out. There will be some changes in England as well during all of this time that the Navigation Acts are being put through. James II is going to take control of England. In 1685, he has a policy, basically 85 to 88, the policy of limiting as much power as they can in New England. They're going to establish a tax on all goods coming from the colonies, forcing the colonies to pay for all of the goods that they're shipping. They're going to abolish the New York Assembly. The New York Assembly is where they would meet and discuss and make decisions for the colony of New York itself. Revoke all royal charters, making it all the Dominion of New England. As you can see in this map, all that green is the Dominion of New England. And they're going to add into the Dominion of New England all of those former Dutch colonies, New Jersey, West and East Jersey, New York, all those. And so England itself is going through a situation where James II is trying to really push how much control he has on the colonies. And that's going to backfire on him. In 1702, we have a major issue. The reason why James II was only in power for 3 years is because Parliament is going to get fed up with the rules and regulations that he keeps putting down. He even is going to go as far as to disband the House of Lords and say he doesn't need them because he's the ruler of England. So Parliament is going to replace James II with Mary II. Mary II is married to William of Orange, the current William of Orange, King of the Netherlands. And they're going to write the English Bill of Rights, changing it to a constitutional monarchy, meaning that the crown can only work with Parliament, and Parliament works with the crown. Neither one works independently of each other. They must work together. It's going to limit the power of the monarchy, giving Parliament more of a say. William and Mary are the first monarchs under this constitution. They're going to return all the colonies to their previous status, except Massachusetts Bay Colony and Plymouth. They're going to merge both of those into just Massachusetts itself. So William and Mary doing really well. They are going to be in power for quite some time. And they don't have such an iron grip on the colonies that previous individuals have. We have Queen Anne's War, also known as the War of Spanish Succession. So there is this situation in Spain of who is going to take over. It's currently a woman is up to take over, and there are men who don't want her to take over. So Queen Anne's War is all about who's going to control Spain. Well, Spain isn't going to be paying attention to a lot of its things at that time. So other people like England and France are going to come together and say, hey, now we have this point where we can try to grab on to Spanish controlled areas. And in doing so, they're going to fight with each other. 1702 to 1713, France and England are going to fight against each other, trying to grab land and try to take land from each other as well. It's not going to be successful. At the end of the war, they gain very little from each other. We have the Treaty of Utrecht, which becomes very important. The Treaty of Utrecht ends the American side of the Queen Anne's War. And England is going to gain the land of Acadia, Newfoundland, and Hudson Bay. So those are the areas above that of Maine. So England gains those things from the French. They're also going to gain access to Spanish ports. But the most important part of the Treaty of Utrecht that you should know is that Britain is going to gain the exclusive rights to the international slave trade. No longer do any other countries get involved in the international slave trade, at least not legally. So the Treaty of Utrecht, Spain and France bow out and say they're not going to be part of the international slave trade, and stays with that of England. The attitudes in the colonies and towards the colonies are going to shift a little. The prime minister at that time, 1702 to 1742, he basically says leave the colonies alone. They're doing okay. They may not be paying all of their taxes, but they're doing their best. They're paying their taxes. There are smugglers in England as well. It's not just in the colonies. Others are going to complain that the colonies are now just an independent commonwealth. They're not really part of England, so they don't agree that they're pulling their own weight. William and Mary then wants to crack down on smuggling. Mary really doesn't like smuggling. They want to crack down on smuggling, so in 1696, they're going to create the Act to Prevent Fraud and Abuses, which requires royal governors to enforce the Navigation Acts or be removed. And it's also going to create what are known as writs of assistance and the Rear Admiralty Court. The Rear Admiralty Court basically divides the colonies up, and for each area, they have an admiral of the fleet, and he presides over all smuggling cases. Now, but the part of this act that's really going to upset the colonies is a writ of assistance. A writ of assistance served as a general search warrant that did not expire. It called upon officials and loyal subjects to assist the customs official in carrying out their job. It allowed customs officials to search anywhere for smuggled goods without having to obtain a specific search warrant. And this is going to inspire the Fourth Amendment, forbidding general search warrants or illegal search and seizures. Basically, what a writ of assistance did, it was open-ended. So the Admiralty Court could write a writ of assistance against someone in general. They didn't really have to have a lot of proof. It was just, you have the right to search this person anytime. And so that writ of assistance was constantly out there. It never changed. So it could last a year, 2 years, 10 years. It just kept going. And this is going to lead to a lot of issues within the colonies themselves. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the French and Indian War, 4.6.